That brings us into invited guests. Before we get to Mr. Ewing, I'd like to recognize Ms. Tracy Mason-Blasey, who is a candidate for Superior Court Judge that's with us tonight. I believe she is the only candidate in attendance tonight. Regardless of who you're voting for, please go and vote August 21st for the runoff election. Now that brings us to Mr. Ewing with another Sound Bites of Snellville history from the Snellville Historical Society.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to be with you again. I've got a lot to cover tonight, and I'm going to get right into it and move along pretty fast. Last week, the last session, we talked about the beginning of education in Snellville, and there's been some talk about they couldn't hear me over the mic. Can you hear me all right tonight?
Yes, sir.
Very good, thank you. The first school that was in Snellville was most likely a log cabin right out in this direction, about a quarter of a mile. The second school was Professor Oscar Brown's Academy, opened about 1883. It's right over here adjacent to the Methodist Church where that residence sits. It operated after Mr. Oscar Brown left town as the academy under several different school principals. Had temporary school in the First Baptist Church for at least 1 year, and then what they considered at that time a modern school was built just east of the present Baptist Church. It was probably sitting about in the far corner of the east parking lot. It's about where it's set. As you recall, I mentioned to you the study that was conducted by the State Department of Education of the Gwinnett County Schools at the request of the Gwinnett County School Superintendent in 1923. One of the recommendations was larger school districts, consolidated schools. Snellville community leaders saw an opportunity and they got out front on the matter. Support was recruited, bonds were passed, and a granite structure was built, and a consolidated school opened here in Snellville in the fall of 1922, not without controversy. The controversy that I sometimes hear in here this evening didn't just start with this group.
I feel much better now.
The school was they argued over the district lines because they were consolidating the schools, and some of the schools were not considered in the early consolidation, and they were not happy about where the lines were drawn. The farmers were not pleased at all about the increase in taxes. Most of the farmers in the 1920s thought if you could read, write, and cipher, if you know what cipher means, you didn't need much more education. You learned to farm on the south end of a mule. The type of structure was a big argument. Some people wanted a brick structure, and some people wanted a granite structure. The first elected trustees, before the building was built, they elected some trustees to see it to the building, were sued in court. Personal profiteering was the accusation. In spite of all this, in spite of the courts, the issues were resolved, and the building was completed. That's my favorite picture of the old school. The location of that school is right over here. If you know where the Crystal Hamburger place is, between the Brand Bank and the old City Hall, that's where the school is at. I chose that picture because I wanted you to see how it's set in comparison to US 78 that's right in front of it. It's hard to imagine that now if you look at there. That bank was about waist high. That picture was taken from Mr. Glad Snell's yard. That's his mailbox right in the corner. That's how close his house was to it. Now, I went over and took a picture the other day, standing at approximately the same place. And what you're looking at is Crystal's Hamburger, and the road that goes through there, that street that goes through there would probably go just about right through the center of the building. The mission of the Snellville Historical Society is to research, document, publish the history of Snellville and the Snellville community. We were so pleased, we were so enthused about the school to have used school as our logo. In addition to our newsletter, our first effort at publication is this book. I think I better show you the author of the book. I was asked to write a history of Snellville community, of Snellville City, by the Historical Society. I had just been the president of the Alumni Association, what I'll talk about in a few minutes, and I said the one thing that gave us all a sense of belonging and a sense of heritage and a sense of pride was that school. I don't believe you would be sitting here tonight, I would be standing here, these people would be here. I don't believe this building would be here tonight had it not been for that school. That's how important it is to, and was to this community. The book contains over 350 pages of text, over 180 school-related pictures, 110 pages of appendices to document the text. There's a full name index. There's no way that I can cover this school in the time allotted. So I'm going to go to a modified bullet format, and I'm going to try to move pretty fast. The Consolidated School opened in the fall of 1922. The building was not completed until the midterm when the students and the staff moved in. The first high school class graduated in the spring of 1923. I have pictures of 2 of that class. There was only 3. Now those people look kind of old to be high school graduates, but that's when they graduated in 1923. Those pictures were taken at that time. The fellow, Mr. Rollins, became a merchant in Stone Mountain, Georgia. He owned his own business over there for most of his life on the main street in Stone Mountain. The largest grocery and general merchandise store in Stone Mountain for a long time. A little bit about the school. It was the first consolidated school, rural consolidated school in Gwinnett County. I want you to hear that. The first rural consolidated school in Gwinnett County. Only 4 schools were in original consolidation. Snellville, Haynes Creek, Forest Academy, and Oak Shade. I won't go into where those are located. Anybody's interested, I'll be glad to talk to them afterwards. But eventually, there were 17 schools that was included in this consolidation, and 1 holdout. Centerville had enough political power at that time. They never consolidated until South opened. But they were supposed to have. The school district ran from the county line in the south, Walton, Newton, DeKalb, to Pewes Creek, and most of you don't know where that's at, in the north. It ran from Haynes Creek, which is down about where the country club is down there, in the east, to Five Forks Trickham Road in the west. Other rural communities, seeing our success, soon got off to their duff with initiative for similar consolidations. Our community was proud. We were the talk of the county. It eventually was known as the school. Instead of Consolidated Snellville School or Snellville High School, it was the school. It was our school. It's what everything revolved around. The building consisted of 12 large rooms and a half gym. You played one end and you give the ball to others, and then they played that end. That's the way it operated. The ceiling was low and you couldn't shoot too high a looping shot. You'd hit the ceiling. There was no lighting. There was no water. The heat was by coal-fired, pot-bellied stoves. We had outdoor toilets. That sounds lacking, doesn't it? It was the envy of other rural communities in Gwinnett County. Later, lights were added. Water for drinking, one fountain in each hallway. And there was water put in the classroom where home economics class was taught for cleaning the utensils and whatever. It was not until the 1950s, that indoor toilets were added. The floors were mopped with oil to keep the dust down. The students swept the floors, by the way, cleaned the rooms, dusted the erasers, made the fires, and all that good stuff. I don't know if those teachers and principals could operate today, do you? That was certainly different from today's school standard and facilities for our entitled children and entitled grandchildren. Additions were made to the school in the 1930s under the WPA programs, if you've ever heard of that. That was a program during the Depression. Look at that dirt moving equipment there. 2 mules and what we call a scoop. Right back there was the bell tower. This T right here was the half gymnasium, and there was a stage on this end of it, that half gymnasium. Now, after the building was completed, this is the gymnasium. That's the entrance into the gym. On each end was 2 more classrooms, and that bulge right there is the gymnasium, is the stage off one side of the gymnasium. So those are outdoor entrances to the stage. They are indoor entrances the same. It's a hallway all around the stage on the inside. The let's see here. Outdoor toilets, running water building. Another building was added on the back side of the clinic that became the Ag building, and there were other buildings added. But what the point I want to make here is a lunchroom was added. The old gym, under the old gym, that would have been under this building where there's windows down there. Up under that gym, there was some space. They cleaned it out, fixed it up, and opened the lunchroom in 1939. Lunches were 5 cents. For those who could afford it, and 5 cents for a carton of milk. Later, the brick facility was added on the east end of the school. That brick facility was what was the old city hall. The brick facility, and I'll talk about that in a minute, was what was the old city hall. The school had grades 1 through 11 until 1951. That was high school. Beginning with the class of 1952, the 12th grade was added. There was no high school graduation in 1952. That became the class of 1953, the first class that included the 12th grade. The last high school class graduated In the spring of 1957, South opened up in the fall of 1958. From the student body came farmers, full-time mothers, military called upon, military careers, merchants, entrepreneurs, teachers, principals, lawyers, judges, builders, construction workers, factory workers, office workers, investors, and a few millionaires. Policemen, preachers, postmen, state employees, federal employees, politicians, mayors, councilmen, county commissioners, and others. And of course, a few ne'er-do-wells. Now, Mr. W.C. Britt, the second picture on the top, second mayor of Snellville, was principal of this school longer than all the rest of the principals together. I wish that I had time to talk about all this, I just don't. Mr. Troy Thompson was the principal of the last year of the school. Mr. Troy Thompson graduated from that school in 1932. There were several other teachers who were graduates of the early years of the school. When the school, consolidated school, closed and South opened, they turned it into an elementary school. So in the fall of 1957, Snellville Elementary School opened with the same facility and the same superintendent as the prior year high school, Mr. Troy Thompson. It operated for 12 years as an elementary school until Britt Elementary opened down adjacent to South. All the time under Mr. Thompson. Now I brought this picture up here for a reason. Every single one of those people in that picture graduated from that school in the early years. Two of those people, this one and this one's Mr. Gladys Snell's children. This is Miss Elizabeth Williams. The library is named for Miss Williams. It's Richard Norton, many of you knew him. This is Mr. Troy Thompson and his wife, who graduated a year before he did, Miss Blanche Norton Thompson. This is Mr. Sonny Partee. There's a building or pavilion or something down in the city park named for Sonny Partee. All those people got their basic education in that consolidated school. The first middle school in Gwinnett County. The first middle school in Gwinnett County opened in the same facility. Didn't have much there to show except that there's a sign on it that says middle school. In the fall of 1969, that school opened under Mr. Reed Mullins. Mr. Reed Mullins stayed with it and it closed until 1974, 5 years. The last class finished in the spring of 1974, and the Snellville Middle School, which is down south of town on Pate Road, opened. Mr. Reed Mullins went down there and opened that school as Mr. Troy went down and opened the elementary school. The Granite Building served as a school facility very effectively from 1922 to 1974, 52 years. Though it was old by local standards, it could have served in some capacity for many years to come had that choice been made. But you can't go back in time. The building was sold by the County Board of Education to private investors, later bought by the city of Snellville. And the city of Snellville made the choice to demolish it, saving only the new brick addition to be used as a city hall. What's left? When you go outside, take a look out here, and you'll see some rock benches here and here, and there's some more around the parking lot. I'm told those are the steps of old Consolidated Rock School. So we saved a little bit of it. Many of us are still around. In 1936, the class of 1932 met and determined at an alumni association should be formed for the graduates of the Snellville Consolidated School. It was formed and met for the first time in 1938. Meeting was suspended in 1942 during World War II in Korea and began meeting again in 1953. And I'm missing a picture here somewhere. Okay, selected that picture. Now you can see what the inside of the gymnasium looked like. I spent some very happy hours there on that stage, and those are the doors that go around in the back of the stage. And I spent many happy hours on that gymnasium floor. That was a setup for the Alumni Association, as you can see, in 1966. 1990, the alumni met to unveil and dedicate a granite monument for the old school. It's on the grounds of the old City Hall, just off of 78 over here, just to the right. We, the alumni, put up that monument to our old school. That's on the property, of course, that was transferred to the Methodist Church. The Alumni Association still meets annually on the last Saturday night of April to reminisce. Our meeting this year had about 225 people in attendance, the youngest being in their 70s and the oldest being in their late 90s. We have had 2 alumnus that live beyond 100 years old. Now, I just love to tell you about the intricacies of the school and how it operated and the discipline and all that sort of time, but time doesn't permit. So 5 points to leave you with. Snellville Consolidated School was the 4th school in Snellville, close in. 1922 to 1957, 34 years. Snellville Elementary School in the same building, 1957 to 1969, 12 years. Snellville Middle School, the first in Gwinnett County, 1969 to 1974, 5 years. The Alumni Association has been meeting since 1938 to the present, except for the war years. The city of Snellville bought and then demolished the old rock school, saving the brick addition for the city hall. It's all in the book. This is our first effort at the Snellville Historical Society to publish books. We have some more in mind. This book is for sale, $45. If you're really interested in the history of Snellville, you will buy this book. It has 2 purposes: to raise and provide funds to publish additional books on the Snellville community, and to give you a history of the most important building and school so far in this community, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ewing. Thank you, Mr. Ewing. That brings us in